It's great to be here. This week in which we are studying and reading from, looking towards Shabbat, as we're now deeper into the book of Deuteronomy, and reading specifically this week from a beautiful set of verses about gratitude that seems really tailor fit for our purposes. So I want to thank Harry for sharing the text sheet. I'm going to read those sources out loud. So if you don't have the visual aid of seeing that, don't worry. I'll be reading those sources to help ground us. So in chapter 8 of Deuteronomy, we read a beautiful description about God bringing us into a good land. And it says, where you will lack nothing. And this section also includes the various species that are abundant in the land that we will benefit from, that we will enjoy. When you have eaten your fill and have become satisfied, bless God for the good land God has given you. So there's this idea in here of, and echoed elsewhere in the book of Deuteronomy, that we bless so that we don't forget. We pause so that we don't forget the source of everything that makes it possible for us, for our bodies to enjoy, to be fed, to be cared for, to be filled with sustenance. And so I had a beautiful experience this week, as I so often am able to, with Cantor Lizzie Shamash on our IJS yoga class that meets every Monday. And she taught this and integrated it into our yoga practice. And I was so taken with it. I wanted to bring it into this sitting practice today to kind of amplify her teaching and to give me and others the chance to absorb it even further. So what she does is she takes these sections that we find embedded in this verse, and she breaks them down to kind of bite-sized, pardon the pun, bite-sized pieces that we can bring into our mindfulness. So the first one is to eat. And of course, here, our Torah verse is talking about literal eating, right? So I'm about taking food, putting it into our mouths, having it enter our bodies and sustain us. But she also makes an analogy here to bringing it to the mat in yoga. And for our purposes today, we can say that eating might be coming to this cushion, coming to this seat, coming to our place, gives us a chance to partake, right? To partake of this experience. It's a form of eating, as it were, a form of consuming. And then there's a pause and being satisfied. Be satisfied, the Torah tells us, is the second text, second kind of this three-part imperative, right? Eat is first. Come to the chair and be satisfied. So, of course, with food, it's meaning we check in and we say, are we satiated? Are we feeling the goodness of the food entering our bodies and feeling a sense of satisfaction? And in yoga, we can say it's also about how is that pose entering our body? Have we had enough of that pose? Should we back off? And with meditation, especially a brief meditation like we do in our daily sit here, it's an opportunity to take a pause after the meditation and to check in and say, has this sit been enough? Has this time of taking a break out of my daily routines satiated me, right? And even if it hasn't fully satiated us, beginning and the next step, pausing to give gratitude for what it is that we just ate, what it is that we just took in or consumed. And so there's a beautiful an invitation here to pause between these in this three-step process. The first is partake. Pause to check in your satiation level and to bless, right? So I kind of called this teaching today partake, pause, and bless. Almost alliteration, not quite, but to echo what the Torah verse is teaching for us. The other thing that Cantor Lizzie lifted up, which was really beautiful, is she pointed out that the cantillation marks, the trope marks, are literally musical notes that we're instructed to sing when we sing these 3 words in Hebrew. Also have a pause, a musical pause after our check-in about our own satiety, right? So it sounds like this. Va'achalta v'savata. Pause. Uverachta. So literally translated, I'll sing it in the English. And you shall eat and be satisfied and bless. So you can kind of hear that pause that's happening musically between that moment of checking in. How am I taking in what I just experienced, what I just ate? And then I'm going to give thanks for that. Whatever that is, by the way, right? Whatever that is. She also brought this quote that I just love, and I'm going to share it again today here, of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk, when he said, if you truly get in touch with a piece of carrot, you get in touch with the soil, the rain, and the sunshine. And this is really what our Torah verse here is teaching us, right? Is that it's a connection to the land that we can access, and that which comes from the land, when we can access this 3-step process. Partake, pause, check in, and bless or give gratitude. So one thought we might take into our kavanah or intent that we might take into our meditation today is to ask ourselves, what is your piece of carrot in today's meditation? Like, what is something that you can try to get in touch with that can be a source of grounding and a source of gratitude? So that after you've come in touch with that carrot, come into contact with that carrot, you can pause and say, I've taken something in, right? It might be in your heart, it might be in your head, it might be in your body, or all 3. And then to say, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. So before we sit together, I'm going to share a brief excerpt from one of my favorite prayers, written by Norman Fisher. And this is excerpted from his longer piece called A Mindful Motzi. Motzi is the blessing that we say before we eat bread. Today, our Torah verse is focused on what happens after we eat. But in the Motzi, the traditional Motzi prayer, we're thanking God for bread coming forth from the earth as a kavanah or an intent before we eat that bread. But these words I felt were so poignant and couldn't direct us to getting in touch with our own carrot, as it were, as we meditate today. So he says, may we, with the blessing of this food, join our hearts to the one heart of the world in awareness and love. And may we, together with everyone, realize the path of awakening and never stop making effort for the benefit of others. So as we take our seats and ground our bodies and wherever our body is in contact with a piece of furniture, the ground, the earth, we can reach out and get in contact with our carrot. What is our piece of carrot that we're going to take in today in this meditation, that we're going to experience, so that we might ultimately pause, check our satiety level, and give gratitude? I'm going to guide us gently through those 3 steps in the next 12 minutes or so as we sit together. As we sit and partake of our breath, of this Shabbat, this stopping of our daily routines, we can just take that pause to check in and to say, am I getting filled up through this meditation? Am I lacking in this meditation personally? Am I wishing for something different, maybe? It's a pause to check in to say, how has this partaking been going? Can I open myself up to it just a little bit more, to feel a sense of Dayinu, of this might just be enough in this moment to sit in this community, to have partaken of the breath, of the community, of the pause. The ahalta, you shall eat. Visavata, and be satisfied. Ve'achalta v'savata, and you shall eat and be satisfied and bless. Give gratitude for what is. We may have woken up today and had some type of experience that didn't meet our expectations, that fell short of what we wanted today. Maybe we didn't get enough sleep. Maybe we were running late to an appointment. And we pause and say, maybe that was enough. Maybe it's enough to have arrived here in this moment without enough sleep, a few minutes late, yet we're here. Virachta, thank you. We're breathing, thank you. Partake, pause, bless. May we, with the blessing of this food, join our hearts to the one heart of the world in awareness and love. And may we, together with everyone, realize the path of awakening and never stop making effort for the benefit of others.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Susan, for that beautiful teaching and practice. And thank you, everyone, for your presence and for your practice today. We will seal this practice with an opportunity to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. So if anyone is observing the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the passing of a loved one, or in a time of mourning, you are welcome to share their name in the chat box. You are welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like, and please rise in body or spirit as we words together. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbi, Yam Divrat Rute, Yamlich
בחייכון וביומכון וחיי דקו בית ישראל. אגלה וזמן קריב ויאמר אמן. יהי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהלל ויתהלל. שמי דקו ברכו. לעולם כל
בחטא ושירתה, תוש וחטא ונחם אתה, דאמירן בעלמא, אמרו אמן.
אמן.
יהי שלמה רבה ממשמיה, בחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמרו אמן.
אמן.
יעשה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
Amen.
אמן.
So thank you so much again, Rabbi Susan, and to everyone for being here today. As always, it's truly such a blessing and such a gift to have this community of practice to gather with on such a regular basis. For anyone who is headed out now, we send you with blessing and prayers for wholeness. We will be here tomorrow at the same time to sit into Shabbat together, so hope to see you then. And all are welcome to stay on now as well for a conversation with Rabbi Susan about her teaching today. So if you have a question about today's teaching or practice, you're welcome to share it in the chat box. Just please preempt your question with the word question in all caps so we can make sure to see it. And you're also welcome to share any reflections, any insights that came up for you in your practice today in the chat box as well. So I'm seeing that we have an observation from Rana who says, craving is the source of so much unnecessary suffering. Definitely true. Insight and practice. When I return to my suchness, I know that I am enough and that I have enough. When I return to the richness of awareness, I am sated and ready to feed others who truly hunger.
Mm.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rana.
Yeah.
Susan, do you want to share anything about, I feel like there's so much wisdom from our tradition also on this idea of enoughness.
Well, yes. And, also would just say, I'll frame this in with the framing of a shameless and wonderful plug for Cantor Lizzie Shamash. I think that when it comes to yoga, some of us might think, well, I'm not enough, right? Or I won't be able to do that because I only have this and I don't have this. And I think one of the things I've really learned through practicing with her in these IJS virtual classes with her is that it's so accessible. Like she kind of sets the table, if we want to continue with that metaphor, and makes it possible for all of us to feel that we have enough, whether we're sitting on a chair and doing yoga with her or on the mat or a little bit of each. So that's one area where I think if someone had asked me, 10 years ago if I'd be doing yoga, I would be like, oh no, I don't have what it takes for that, right? But it's a beautiful experience to be with her, and the entire IGS community who comes to that offering, and to feel like, wow, that can be enough today. That can be enough. It's okay, even with the limitations in the body, that's enough.
Yeah, I always think of the Passover song, Dainu.
Exactly. Yeah, and I almost came up for me when I was guiding meditation today. Because that's literally what we're singing over and over again at the Passover Seder, hopefully enough to last us through the whole year so that we can carry a sense of Dainu with us as we come out of Egypt and carry on with the rest of our year, into the summer, fall, winter, and back to the next Passover.
Yeah. And I love, the way that mindfulness practice, it's such a simple practice. And I think sometimes it's so simple that it can be overlooked in terms of its power and its profundity and its value. And yet simple things are holy. And there's kind of no end to the journeying that one can take if we really go deeper into an experience that might be as simple as just inhaling and exhaling. Yeah. And yet such a dayenu, like, wow, every experience, no matter how simple, contains the fullness of this mystery and this miracle of being alive.
I was reflecting on that. It's always, I love our sits together, and I'm always hesitant when I step in to guide to break the silence, as it were. And so I was thinking about that, like, in 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes of the first part of our sit today, just the smallest release of the breath, right? Just that's really what I was like, wow, my breath feels deeper and lower now than when I first sat down. Like, wow, that's great. I'll take it. So it can be very, very small. I think some of us are looking for that profundity of like, well, what was I supposed to feel? And it's just like, no, micro. I'm interrupting this sit, and this is my takeaway at this moment. And that's really literally what I was feeling today. I was like, that's it. My breath is lower. It's deeper and lower than when I first took my seat in this stool.
That is just, Dainu, just for this reminder.
Exactly.
That there was a podcast, I think they renamed it, but it used to be called 10% Happier. And I just so appreciate these reminders and practice that it's not about having this like automatic radical transformation all the way to 100%. It's about moving the needle like inch by inch. And that's really, how life grows and how life happens. And there are the moments of just big radical shifts, but usually it's right.
Yeah. As we say in Hebrew, little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something I appreciate so much about Jewish wisdom in general, that we have moments in our cycle for the peak experience. Like Shavuot, our time of revelation, is a literal mountaintop. It's pretty peak. And yet most of the time we are really attending to what it means to be a human day to day, week to week, resting on Shabbat, and really attending to the more mundane, dimension of reality, and getting to integrate those big moments of transformation and peak realization, but just always come back to this simplicity.
I saw in the chat that Barbara is asking if the quote from Norman Fisher that I shared today is from a particular book. And I confess, I don't know, Barbara, because, and Rebecca, this may resonate with you as well, but I first learned about this blessing at an IGS retreat. So this is something that is offered to us when I was a part of the clergy leadership program. So yeah, it's an amazing blessing, and I do not know if it appears in a book somewhere. It may, but that's where I first learned it, was through IGS.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, Norman Fisher is, for those who were here yesterday, going to be teaching a day-long retreat soon that I think is also going to be streamed online with Rabbi Dorothy Richmond. for Elul, and also an in-person Shabbaton here in the Bay Area. So lots of ways to practice with Norman as well.
He is amazing.
I see a question from Harris in the chat. Is there a separate prayer for when we complete a sit? Do you have any suggestions for that, Susan?
Oh, wow. Well, one that comes to mind is Hatov v'Hametiv. And this is the blessing. It starts like all other traditional blessings in Jewish tradition, but it's what we say when we hear good news. And embedded in these words is goodness, like an intensification of goodness. And so, I think that might be one blessing that would be really beautiful to say at the conclusion of a sit, right? Thank you to God who brought this opportunity to increase goodness, awareness, right, in my life. How about you, Rebecca? Is there one that comes to mind for you?
Well, I love the question because there is a tradition in Jewish prayer to seal a prayer with what's called a chatima, which literally means sealing. And it's usually a one-liner. So if folks are familiar with Jewish davening, you might be familiar with how at the end of a prayer, there's a line that usually says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and then a little like, blessed are you, source of life, who gives love or who gives goodness, or something that is related to the prayer itself. So there is this tradition of sealing a prayer, sealing a practice. And I can just share from my own practice. I like to seal often my meditations and my prayers with Oseh Shalom. And that's also a tradition in Judaism that tends to be the sealing prayer at the end of a service, right? And at the end of the Kaddish, and just ending that prayer for wholeness and peace. Shalom actually also means completion. So it can go really well at the completion of something. And then there's a tradition also in the Buddhist tradition that I've learned from Buddhist meditation retreats of dedicating the merit of a practice afterwards. So sometimes you might be at a sit where a teacher says, may the benefits of this practice, may the love, the awareness that we've cultivated here be for the benefit of all beings, or, ripple out to what it's needed. So lots of good options there.
For sure. Thank you to Harris for asking the question.
Yeah.
No, it made me think, Rebecca, when you're talking about in the Babylonian Talmud, we're urged to add our own riffs, our own prayers, our own dedications, as it were, at the end of our standing prayer. So after the beautiful blessing that you referenced of peace and wholeness and completion that ends that prayer, there's also this other page that we often overlook that includes a couple of different options drawn from the Talmud saying, you might want to say this, you might want to say this, right? So it's a beautiful idea of taking that into the Amidah, right, of the standing prayer. So as we complete the practice of saying that prayer, we say, and I'm dedicating this to so-and-so, holding this person in my heart. It's a beautiful idea to bring those two traditions together.
I'll also just share that in this beautiful teaching that you offered us today with the metaphor of eating, and this kind of three-part taking in what we're taking in, pausing to feel the fullness or feel the impact, and then the blessing, the gratitude. It just really struck me how I think that three-part formula really can be applied to literally any moment of our experience, right? As you were guiding us, even just in the breath, it's a taking in, it's a filling up, it's a giving out. And, in conversation and the ways that we intake information and the ways that we intake whatever it is that we might be intaking, it's such a beautiful way just to describe how life is, that we're kind of always in this exchange and receiving, and the pausing, the being, the feeling, and then the giving. And I loved, in the blessing is a kind of acknowledgement of gratitude. And I'm just wondering, Susan, if you want to speak a little bit more just on anything that comes up for you in that contemplation. And also, gratitude is such a foundational pillar of Jewish tradition and Jewish prayer. The first words we say upon waking are grateful, modah, modah. And even, you know, the word for Jews, Yehudim, has within it the root hod, hodaya, gratitude. It's so essential to who we are. So just, you know, any thoughts on that? I know sometimes, especially when things are hard, sometimes it can be harder to feel gratitude. Sometimes it can actually be easier to feel gratitude for what is going well.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about how this is applied, you know, beyond food, beyond yoga, beyond meditation, after we get up off the cushion and go back into life. And an example that comes to mind for me is I'm headed into what I anticipate might be a really difficult discussion today with someone. And I'm thinking about what that means to partake of this person's point of view, to really take it in and to pause, even when it's hard, even when I always say, I didn't want that today, right? But what does it mean to let the impact of that person's point of view sit with me? And is there some way I can be grateful for that? Maybe it's in the content. Maybe it's not in the content. Maybe it's just in the fact that we actually can come together and talk with each other, even if we might not agree. So I don't know. I think in answer to your question, Rebecca, I think one of the hardest moments to be grateful is when we get something that we don't want at first glance. And we can say, just kind of pause and say, can I find any good in this? Can I find one piece of gratitude, a reframing, right? And it doesn't mean that we repress what is difficult or we don't want, but just to find that sliver of, I'm grateful we could come together like this. I'm grateful that you didn't say no to meeting with me because you anticipated the disagreement, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it strikes me that, even no matter how subtle, it's like there is always something that we can be grateful for in any given moment, even if it's just literally the ground beneath our feet, right? Like gravity holding us to the earth. And no matter how subtle, it goes back to what we were saying about the kind of just moving the needle, the dayenu, the 10%, even that sliver of gratitude can be like a doorway into the heart, back into that place of connection with the greater whole and the life that is always supporting us and giving back to us. So
yeah. Beautiful. There's other beautiful blessing suggestions coming in from the chat how to tame life, koach, that gives strength to the weary. That's also one of our morning blessings, but could be a very beautiful chatima or sealing blessing for a meditation as well.
On that note, to seal this beautiful practice, beautiful conversation, thank you again.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Everyone for sharing in this beautiful conversation. Just wonderful to just feeling the gratitude flowing for this community, for this practice and these teachings. So thank you to everyone, and hope to see you tomorrow at the same time.
Bye-bye.